So whether it's Tracy Allard or just this growing list, our colleagues at CTV started putting this one together. Doesn't matter if it's provincial or federal politics, doesn't seem to matter what party. Every day brings new stories of politicians who were traveling during the holiday period. The optics don't look good. Let's talk to somebody who lives and breathes this stuff. Bob Pickard of Signal Leadership, long-term PR strategist, joining us now. Bob, what's been your reaction to all of this?
Good morning, John, and Happy New Year. My reaction is one of horror. I see all this over-engineered public relations misleading of people, spinning, deceit or distortion. And social media communication nowadays, it should sustain the social contract, the mutual obligation we all have in society between those who govern and the governed, the people. And we're seeing a real division open up there. And if people see that politicians are living this life that they themselves would like to live, or doing different things than they're being asked to sacrifice, then there's going to be a lot of public anger. And John, as you know, social media, it's emotional media. And there's a lot of anger right now, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. And so politicians, public leaders, business leaders, they all have to tune into that right wavelength and get the zeitgeist right.
So you use that word misleading. Misleading because they went away and didn't say something, perhaps in some cases, or misleading because they went away and they were still maybe doing social media posts. Obviously, Ontario's now former finance minister was asked about that, posting on social media during the holiday season when they're actually overseas.
Yeah, I mean, you can't live in some kind of parallel universe situation where you've got your real life that you're actually living offline, and then the life that you have, like a PR life that you're living online. What you do in your real life has to match what it is that you're communicating. And so what we've seen here more than anything else is a failure to be transparent and to not pretend or to not try to make people believe one thing when actually you're doing something that's completely different. I mean, hypocrisy and contradictions, they don't sell well on social media, as you know.
So where do you think this story goes? I mean, I would imagine that if the continued fallout from this is people take a generally laissez-faire approach to COVID itself because they don't feel like politicians are behaving properly, that's not going to be good for anyone. But then what happens? Like, what's the fallout from there?
Look, I think people have to start to think it through in advance from the audience's perspective, what it is that they're trying to communicate with people. How will it look? How will the visuals match the storyline? Who might get angry? Who are we really talking to? They should also ask some basic questions. If you're a public leader, if you're an executive, you should ask, am I the right person to communicate this? Does this need to be communicated right now? What is the feeling of the audience with whom I seek to communicate? And if I communicate in the now with these people, with real-time communication, can they receive this accurately? Can they understand what I'm saying? And can they interact with me? Leadership communication has never been more important. All of these spectacular PR disasters are showing it. Yet, at the same time, John, the difficulty of doing it right has never been greater. So these executives, they should have a plan. They should have a strategy. They should have a system of doing it where they design with their staff who does what, so that we don't have these car crash situations like we saw with Rod Phillips.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, there's, I don't know, in the United States, you got like the Elon Musks and Mark Cubans of the world that are always okay, quite comfortable, really, leaping without a net. But, you know, my general observation is a lot of this stuff comes across as stilted most of the time. Just a lot of executives maybe haven't spent enough time with it. But since you are talking about the business community as well, and we were talking with Andy Willis of the Globe and Mail earlier, if there were hypothetically, you know, CEOs of big companies that were overseas during the holidays or who have been traveling a lot when the own marching orders for their companies are to hang tight, be safe, how do you think they're going to be looking at the situation involving these politicians and possibly reacting? Do they come out? Do they have to say, look, I actually was traveling myself too if that was the case.
If that was the case and they asked their employees particularly to do something different, then they should be transparent and fearless and courageous and just learn a lesson from it that they never forget going forward. You put your finger on something really important, talking about some of those famous business executives earlier, John. A lot of PR today, it's just way too over-engineered. It's all too obvious with all the framing and the calculation. A lot of these executives, they should simply, honestly, transparently, in an open way, just be themselves at their best. That's the whole idea of being an effective communicator in a social media age.